When you hear the name Ozzy Osbourne, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For many, it's not his groundbreaking work with Black Sabbath. It's not his hauntingly powerful voice that changed the face of heavy metal. No, it's the infamous incident from 1980 when Ozzy bit the head off a live bat on stage in Des Moines, Iowa. That image wild-eyed, black-clad Ozzy in the middle of a chaotic rock show committing an act so bizarre, it shocked the world has become the defining moment for many. But let's stop and ask the question. Is this the only thing we should remember Ozzy for? The answer is no. Ozzy Osbourne is so much more than the man who bit a bat. He's the man who saved metal and defined a genre for generations. In fact, Ozzy didn't just join rock history, he created it. For decades, Ozzy has been associated with the chaos and madness of rock and roll. He's lived a life that most people couldn't fathom, full of excess scandals and survival. But beneath the headlines and the controversies, there is a man who has been at the heart of the heavy metal revolution. Ozzy's contribution to the genre isn't limited to his wild antics or his infamous bat incident. His music, his persona, and his very voice shaped the face of metal. And when Black Sabbath disbanded, he didn't just fade into the shadows, he reinvented himself, went solo, and brought metal into the mainstream like never before. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just play metal, he embodied it. He was raw, unpolished, and unapologetic. He made the world realize that rock didn't have to be glamorous or polished. It could be dirty, it could be dangerous, and it could be real. Ozzy's influence, both as a musician and as a cultural figure, will never be fully appreciated until we stop remembering him as the guy who bit a bat and start remembering him as the man who revolutionized a genre. So let's take a closer look at the man who saved metal, the legend, who transcended the madness. This is the real Ozzy Osbourne, the true Prince of Darkness. Let's dive into his legacy. In 1968, 4 young men from Birmingham, England, came together with a shared vision of creating something unlike anything that had come before. They didn't know it at the time, but they were about to invent a new genre of music. That genre, heavy metal. And at the heart of it all was Ozzy Osbourne. Black Sabbath was born not in a high-end studio or in the lap of luxury, but in a gritty, working-class neighborhood. It wasn't the most glamorous beginning, but what they lacked in resources they made up for in raw talent and determination. Tony Iommi, the band's guitarist, was the one who truly set the tone for what would become heavy metal. After losing the tips of 2 fingers in a factory accident, Iommi created the iconic riffs that would become the backbone of Black Sabbath's sound. His heavy, sludgy guitar tone wasn't just unique, it was revolutionary. And in the midst of it all was Ozzy's voice. Ozzy wasn't the first choice to be the lead singer. In fact, the band initially struggled to find someone who could capture the sound they were looking for. But when Ozzy auditioned for the band, something clicked. His voice was unlike anything they'd heard before. It was rough, powerful, and uniquely suited to the dark, heavy riffs that Tony and the band were creating. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just the frontman. He became the embodiment of Black Sabbath. His voice carried the heaviness, the doom, the bleakness, and the defiance of the music itself. He didn't just sing the songs, he lived them. The release of Black Sabbath in 1970 marked the birth of a genre. The album was unlike anything the world had ever heard. It was dark, it was heavy, and it was loud. And it was only possible because Ozzy Osbourne's voice fit perfectly with Tony Iommi's groundbreaking guitar work. The song Black Sabbath in particular was a game changer. With its slow, brooding riff and Ozzy's chilling vocals, the song laid the groundwork for what metal would become dark, ominous, and unapologetically powerful. The success of Black Sabbath was immediate. The album didn't just introduce a new sound, it created a new movement. Ozzy Osbourne was no longer just a guy with a crazy stage persona. He was the voice of a generation. A generation that was tired of following the rules, a generation that wanted to shout back at the world. Black Sabbath wasn't just a band, they were a force. And Ozzy was the heart of that force. The influence of Ozzy Osbourne stretches far beyond his own band, Black Sabbath. Once Black Sabbath was established as the face of metal, Ozzy's persona, voice, and stage presence became synonymous with the genre. He wasn't just a performer, he was a living representation of what metal was all about. Ozzy's legacy wasn't just in the music he created, it was in the cultural impact he had. His rebellious attitude, his willingness to defy norms, and his commitment to embracing darkness, chaos, and authenticity all became trademarks of the metal scene. The leather, the spikes, the theatricality. It was all part of the world Ozzy Osbourne helped create. As Ozzy's solo career soared after leaving Black Sabbath, he continued to influence and shape the trajectory of metal music. His collaborations with some of the greatest musicians of the time, like Randy Rhoads, elevated Ozzy's sound to new heights. Together, they created anthems like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley songs that would become essential to the heavy metal lexicon. But Ozzy didn't just influence the music. His image and lifestyle became the template for countless bands that came after him. Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie Slipknot, and even bands from other genres like Green Day and System of a Down all cite Ozzy as a key influence. His ability to blend theatrical performance with hard-hitting music became a model for future generations of rockers. But Ozzy's influence didn't stop at the musicians. His unique approach to performance, the wild antics, the dark imagery, the eccentric outfits, became the gold standard for rock and metal artists who wanted to push boundaries. Ozzy showed them that it wasn't enough to just play music. To be a true icon, you had to create a spectacle, make people feel something they hadn't felt before. Ozzy Osbourne took metal from a subculture to a mainstream phenomenon. The genre grew in popularity, and so did the bands that followed in his footsteps. Without Ozzy, it's hard to imagine a world where bands like Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Slipknot would have found the same level of success. Ozzy Osbourne was never just a rock star. He was a cultural force. His rebellion, his outrageous stage presence, and his unapologetic attitude became the foundation of heavy metal. And because of Ozzy, metal grew into one of the most influential genres in the world. Ozzy didn't just survive rock and roll, he transformed it. And in doing so, he made metal what it is today, an expression of defiance, individuality, and power. By 2023, Ozzy Osbourne's body was telling him it was time to slow down. After nearly 50 years of rocking the world, defying expectations, and living through more than his fair share of hardships, Ozzy made the tough decision to retire from touring. But that wasn't an end. It was just another part of his incredible journey. Ozzy wasn't just a rock star. He was the embodiment of metal's defiance, resilience, and spirit. His influence on music will continue to live on long after he's stepped off the stage. In his own words, Ozzy summed it up perfectly. "I've had the greatest time of my life, and I've been blessed to do what I've done." Even in retirement, Ozzy's presence in the rock world is undeniable. His legacy is everywhere in the albums that every metal fan still listens to, in the countless bands he inspired, and in the hearts of fans who have followed him through decades of music. But it's not just his music that defines Ozzy. It's his attitude. Ozzy taught us all that you don't have to follow the rules, you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to apologize for being yourself. In a world full of polished performers, Ozzy Osbourne was the guy who stood out. And that's why we'll never forget him. Ozzy Osbourne is the Prince of Darkness, not because he embraced the dark side, but because he made it his own. He showed the world that metal wasn't just music, it was a way of life, a statement of individuality and rebellion. He proved that you could be loud, outrageous, and unapologetic and still create something that mattered. His voice will echo forever, his music will live on in countless forms, and his story will continue to inspire the next generation of rockers. Ozzy Osbourne has truly earned his crown, and no one will ever take it from him. Ozzy's influence cannot be denied, and his legacy continues to shape music today. If you agree, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribe for more videos on rock's greatest. Don't forget to comment below and tell us, what's the one Ozzy song you can't live without?